These are the lecture notes for Chapter 40 on the circulatory system. So as we have done with the other body systems, we're going to sort of summarize the circulatory systems of other animals before we concentrate on the human circulatory system. For the invertebrate circulatory systems, sponges, cnidarians, and nematodes lack a circulatory system. They don't actually have a separate circulatory system. Sponges circulate water using many in-current pores and one excurrent pore. If you remember, the osculum is the excurrent pore. So their circulatory fluid is simply water, and it just comes in the little pores in their body and then goes out the osculum. And then hydra and other cnidarians, such as jellyfish and sea anemones, their circulatory fluid is also water instead of blood, and they circulate that water through a gastrovascular cavity, which functions as a primitive circulatory system as well as a digestive system. Nematodes, or roundworms, the one we have in lab was the heartworm, use their digestive tract also as a circulatory system. So it's not a gastrovascular cavity exactly, but they use the same pathway for food as they do fluids. And here we see the closed circulatory system example, which humans have, which starts with a heart and then transports blood through arteries and capillaries and veins back to the heart. So blood stays within a system of blood vessels, versus insects, which have open circulatory systems. And they have several structures called hearts that pump blood through that open system, but the blood ends up in an open space instead of being continuously transported through a closed system. So for the open circulatory system, all the fluid is called hemolymph. So there's not just a separate tissue fluid, lymphatic fluid, and blood. The fluid in the body is all the same, and it's called hemolymph. In a closed circulatory system, the fluid that is transported through the blood vessels is blood. So it is a distinct circulatory fluid. It's not the same as the rest of the body fluid. And here is just an example of the sponge. Remember, it doesn't really have a circulatory system, but water comes in through all these pores and then goes out through the osculum. And in the jellyfish, the jellyfish has a gastrovascular cavity instead of having a circulatory system. In vertebrates, the circulatory systems can range from a two-chambered heart to a three-chambered heart to a four-chambered heart. In fish, there is a two-chambered heart. In other words, there's just one atrium and one ventricle. So the atrium is the receiving chamber and the ventricle is the pumping chamber. And so blood from the systemic circulation is transported. Well, we'll start with the heart, I guess. So the heart transports blood to the gills and then the blood travels from the gills to the systemic circulation and back to the heart. In amphibians, there is a three-chambered heart. So there's a right atrium, a left atrium, and a single ventricle. So in that single ventricle, oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is allowed to mix, which makes it not as efficient as the circulatory system of reptiles and mammals. In reptiles, there is a right atrium, a left atrium, a right ventricle, and a left ventricle. But the septum that divides the heart is not complete in some reptiles. So you can't say really, the fish have a two-chambered heart, the amphibians have a three-chambered heart. Reptiles have sort of a cross between a three and four-chambered heart. And mammals have a complete four-chambered heart that separates oxygenated blood from deoxygenated blood. And here are the notes on the circulatory system of the fishes. The heart is a two-chambered heart. Blood is pumped from the heart through the gills and then to the rest of the body. So here's the heart, pumps blood to the gills to pick up oxygen, and then to the rest of the body, and then back to the heart. Amphibians have a three-chambered heart. And so what happens is the blood from the heart is pumped, well, first of all, in the ventricle, since it's only one single ventricle, the oxygenated blood from the lungs and the deoxygenated blood from the body systems mixes. And that blood is pumped to the lungs to pick up oxygen, back to the heart, and then again, it is pumped from the heart to the body systems, and then back to the heart again. So it's pumped to the left side of the heart, which is the red side, and then pumped to the body. And then it's pumped to the right side of the heart, and then pumped to the lungs. But still, the blood in the ventricle is allowed to mix. So there is a pulmonary and a systemic circulation. Pulmonary is the circulation that carries blood to the lungs, and systemic carries blood to the body systems or the rest of the body. We call this double circulation. The reptile heart is still a three-chambered heart, but there are two ventricles that are incompletely separated here. So yes, the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood can mix a little bit here in this area, but it's still more efficient than the amphibian heart. So you have blood that's pumped from the right ventricle to the lungs where it picks up oxygen, and then it comes back to the left side of the heart, and it's pumped from the left ventricle to the body systems where it delivers the oxygen, and then the deoxygenated blood is brought back to the right side of the body. And this is pretty much how it works in the mammalian heart. Mammals, birds, and actually crocodiles all have, crocodilians include alligators, all have a four-chambered heart, complete four-chambered heart. So even the birds and the crocodiles and alligators have a complete four-chambered heart with two completely separated ventricles. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood from the body and takes it to the lungs. So the right side of the heart pumps blood to the lungs where it picks up oxygen, and then the left side of the heart pumps blood to the rest of the body where it delivers that oxygen. The blood is a connective tissue. So this is a new section on blood. The blood is a connective tissue. Remember, connective tissue contains specialized cells as well as a matrix that surrounds the cells. So in this case, the cells are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. These are the red blood cells. These are different types of white blood cells. There are 5 different types. And then platelets are just fragments. And the extracellular matrix is blood plasma. Now, what blood does not have, which most other connective tissue has, it doesn't have any collagen or elastic fibers or reticular fibers. So the matrix is just simply a fluid without any protein fibers. The functions of blood are for transportation of transporting oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nutrients, regulation of things like, just chemical levels in the blood, and protection. The white blood cells protect us from pathogens that could cause disease. The blood plasma, the matrix of the blood, is 92% water with the following chemicals dissolved in the water. Chemicals that can be dissolved in the water are nutrients. Nutrients can include glucose and amino acids. Waste, which can include carbon dioxide, urea, ammonia, and hormones. Hormones travel through the blood. Ions are found dissolved in the blood plasma. Sodium ions, chloride ions, which come from salt, bicarbonate ions, and this should have a negative charge. And then trace amounts of calcium, magnesium, copper, potassium, and zinc. There are proteins dissolved in the plasma, and they're just not long fibers. So the proteins are albumin, and then globulins, like hemoglobin, and immunoglobulins, which another word for that is antibodies. The function of the albumin is mainly to make the blood more concentrated or thicker than the tissue fluid. And the globulins have different functions. Antibodies function in destroying pathogens, and hemoglobin transports oxygen and carbon dioxide. There is also a chemical called fibrinogen. When you remove the fibrinogen, the plasma is called serum. Blood serum is just blood plasma with the fibrinogen removed. Red blood cells are called erythrocytes. Erythro means red, cyte means blood. There are about 5 million red blood cells per microliter of blood. We take a measurement of blood called the hematocrit. The hematocrit is the fraction of total blood volume occupied by red blood cells. So it's the amount of red blood cells compared to the rest of the blood, the plasma, the white blood cells, and the platelets. Mature red blood cells, or erythrocytes, have lost their nuclei. They shed their nuclei, so they don't even have a nucleus. They also shed a lot of their organelles as well. And this is so that they can be more efficient, because all they're going to do for the next, on average, 120 days or 4 months is transport oxygen and carbon dioxide through the circulatory system. And then they're going to wear out. So they're just, at this point when they're mature, red blood cells are just designed to transport oxygen, and they do not last, they last longer than skin cells, but they don't last very long. They last about 4 months, and then they're broken down and recycled. Hemoglobin is found on the red blood cells of all vertebrates, and that is a pigment that transports oxygen. It actually also transports a small amount of carbon dioxide.